Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 29, and we're going to talk about the impersonal market, pencils, gay wedding cakes, and gay websites. All right, so when I would talk about the free market, I would ask my students that if I gave them each $10, go out and buy a beverage of their choice, and then come back to class, they can keep the change, right? Of course, I don't give them $10. I don't have that much money, but and let's just say they all did that. They all came back, and I said, "So how'd you do it?" And they all kind of would look at me and say, "What are you asking?" And I said, "Well, when you go into the store, what'd you do?" And no one, because they're suspicious of my questions, and so they never really answer right away. They're like, "Okay, where is he going with this?" And I said, "Well, right, you go up to the manager and you say, what is their religious affiliation, right? And if they don't give you if they don't answer that question, then you say, what's their political affiliation, right? Who do they vote for in the last election? That's what you ask when you go into the store to buy a beverage, right?" And of course, all of them would kind of chuckle, because that's probably not a question that they would ask, right? The question they would ask first is, do you carry this brand of drink? And if they say yes, then you ask them how much it is. And then that's it, right? You pay and then you leave. Or you say, that's too much, I'll buy it someplace else. That's all you care about. In other words, in the marketplace, you really don't care that much about the person who is selling you things. At the same time, if you are selling things, you don't really care all that much about the person who's buying from you, as long as they're paying, right? And if you're buying stuff, you just care about whether a store carries something, and if they do carry it, how much is it? This is what we mean by impersonal. The marketplace doesn't care about you. And some people might say, well, that's a bad thing. No, that's what we want. What we want for people who are interacting with each other in the marketplace to only care about what someone is selling and for how much. And then if you are one of the sellers, all you really care about is, do you have enough money to buy my stuff? And that's basically it. And so it doesn't matter what your religious background is. It doesn't matter what your political affiliation is, because a transaction is a transaction. I'll just add here that some people believe that it's a zero-sum game. So one person spends $5 and the other person, so one person loses $5, the other person gains $5. But what a lot of people don't realize is that a transaction only takes place when both parties, buyer and seller, feel like that they have gained through the transaction, right? So in a $5 purchase, you believe that what you're buying is worth more than $5. That's why you're buying it. And the other person, they want your $5 more than they want to hold on to whatever product that is, okay? And so both people benefit. And people don't really, a lot of people don't understand the value added aspect of the marketplace, how by engaging in these kinds of transactions, value increases. Okay, so let's talk about the pencil. And I know a lot of people don't really use graphite pencils any longer. But if you were to look at the old school graphite pencil, and there's a book, a short book called I Pencil, I believe. And I know that Milton Friedman talked about the pencil. And I'll just say right from the very beginning that when I read Milton Friedman's explanation of the graphite pencil, it blew me away. Imagine this person who got his doctorate learning about race theory in the traditional leftist kind of way, all Marx based, and having lots of struggles, right? The way that people would explain race dynamics on the so-called left, right? The Marxist, according to the Marxist tradition, it always seemed problematic. Like nothing really made 100% sense. And so I was always kind of left sort of hanging, as some people might say, until I read Milton Friedman's rendition or version of the pencil story. And so how does the pencil story go? Well, no one person in the world today can make a graphite pencil, right? And even if a person could, it'd be pretty expensive, right? Like a handmade graphite pencil, $20. Like no one would buy it, right? And even though you might say it's custom, it's handmade, look how awesome it is. Well, you can buy probably better pencils, $20 for $1 or something like that. I don't know. I haven't bought a lead pencil in a while, but they're very, very cheap. And so why would you buy a custom pencil for $20 when you can have like 20 for $1, right? That kind of something like that. But the thing is, the pencil, why is it so cheap? You have thousands of people all over the world contributing to the manufacturing of one pencil, and yet it's like pennies. Why? I mean, the wood comes probably from North America, the brass comes from someplace, the rubber comes from Malaysia, the graphite, maybe South America, the paint, who knows where. All of this stuff comes from all over the world, and yet the pencil is very inexpensive. And Friedman would say that's the power of the marketplace. And then he says, even people who would hate each other if they met each other cooperate to make this pencil for a very low price. And as soon as I read that line, a light bulb just went off in my head, and I said, this is it. What is more powerful than hate, than violence? It's greed. The greed, which, as we define it, right, the desire to want more and better, right? If that's greed, then all of us agree. We work because we got to pay rent, maybe eventually buy a house. We work, we look for better jobs so we can buy and eat better food. We have all of this stuff going on. And so the desire to improve our lives makes us not care who we're doing business with. In other words, through the free market, you bring about peace and harmony. So the impersonal marketplace is not, demeaning to people, to minorities, to anybody. Rather, it puts the burden for each individual to figure out how to produce something that other people want, something that brings value, brings happiness, brings something that other people need to market at a very reasonable price. Even people who will hate you otherwise would say, but your products are really good. You know what? Instead of going to war with you, and in which case I won't have access to that product anymore, I'm going to make peace with you so I can have that product all the time. And so the free market brings people together. It fosters peace. It incentivizes people to think of and look for a harmonious way to do business with each other, to streamline it. And if you're getting rich together, then why would you go to war with each other? I'm pretty sure I gave this example before, but I was talking about the free market, and I said, I bet if we went to Palestine, right, the place where all the massive corporate media tells us all the Israelis hate all of the Palestinians, I bet you could find people who are in love with each other, if we could. And then as soon as I said that, someone raised their hand, and she said that her father, who is Palestinian, his business partner is Jewish, is Israeli. And I said, there it is. See, you have some people presenting us with information, trying to convince us and persuade us to see things subjectively when the reality is far more complicated. Don't even imagine that Palestinians and Israelis can fall in love with each other. There's no Romeo and Juliet there. No, they all hate each other. They all want to kill each other. Not true. And the only reason why the vast majority of each of these two groups of people are at war with each other is because of governing bodies. the governing bodies which prevent people from cooperating more, living in peace. They don't want that, right? They would rather, because their power comes from their power, their authority, their status, their wealth comes from constant conflict. Eventually, it all falls apart, but they don't think that far ahead. All they care about is the here and now, and eventually they'll figure out a way to perpetuate all those ill-gotten gains. And we're kind of seeing the end game of it now before our eyes as the dollar begins to unravel, and we begin to see that the BRICS Bank is on the rise. But the same phenomena can help us to understand some of the things that are happening in society today. Very recently, there was a Supreme Court resolution that this gay couple was suing, I guess, this evangelical computer website designer who said that he doesn't make websites for homosexual couples. And so the gay couple sued him to force him to make their website. This is very similar to the gay wedding cake phenomena, where there were lots of stories, similar stories. So a gay couple wanted this Christian bakery to make their cake, and they said, no, we don't make cakes for homosexual weddings. And so they sued them to try to force them to make the cake. There was also this gay couple who wanted this pizza shop to cater their wedding. And in class, I said, is that really, you want pizza at your wedding reception? Okay, right. And so immediately people began to realize that there's something strange going on here. Most people, if you are looking for someone to cater your wedding, make your cake, or make your website, you're going to go by word of mouth to find who your friends used, look at online reviews, and then you're going to look for the person who you think would do a great job on the product that you are trying to acquire. But in these situations, it's pretty obvious that a gay couple went out of their way to look for evangelical or Christian workers to try to get them to, refuse service so that they could sue them, right? Most people, if they're so excited about getting married and someone says, yeah, I don't want to do your cake, you just find someone else to do your cake. Why are you going to sue them? You don't want to get married? It's just a very odd phenomena, right? Most people will just move on. So why would you sue them? Because you're trying to make a statement, right? And so if you wanted to make a statement, then you looked all over for someone who would say no. So I would even go so far as to say that the couple that went to the Christian website designer, they called like 10 people before that person and said, would you make our gay website? And they probably said, sure, we'll do that. It's like, okay, never mind. And they kept calling people until they found someone who said no. It probably was like that with the wedding cake. It probably was like that with the pizza caterer, right? Because, what restaurant would say no to all of that money? No, I don't think so. And so that is a very interesting phenomena where people are trying to look for other people to sue. Now, some people might disagree with the verdict that a website designer can say no. But I like to always try to imagine an extreme situation. And if in the most crazy, ridiculous, extreme situation, you can see why you want the power to say no with either party, right? You want that to exist. As if you can think of an extreme situation and you're like, well, in that situation, see, and then to preserve justice, not to be hypocritical, then you have to allow everyone to be able to do this, right? And so back in the wedding cake time, when that story first came out, I said in class that imagine if you were a Jewish baker, and there are many Jewish bakers, If you were a Jewish baker and a bunch of skinheads came into your bakery and said, hey, we're celebrating Hitler's birthday this weekend, bake a cake for us. I mean, you should want to be able to have the right to say, no, we're not going to do that. But it's interesting that that scenario is never brought up. And some people might even say, oh, you're just trying to, no one would, that would never happen. Well, what are you talking about? No, if you are willing to concede that a Jewish baker does not have to make a cake for skinheads, then anyone else can refuse service for whatever reason. Okay. And it's this kind of phenomena that if you see in the free market, everyone is able to buy and sell to get what they want. And most people, though, if you are going to say, no, I'm not going to do that for you, word is going to get out. And we've talked about this before in a different context, but everyone's going to hear about how you refused to make this or that, do this or that, and why. And so then everyone who hears that, some people will say, oh, well, I'm never going to go there. But then a lot of other people will say, oh, I'm going to use that, right, service. And so how things shake out at the end doesn't really matter. What we do know is that their competitors, other people who provide the same service, is going to have more customers because you said no. Those people have to go somewhere. They're going to go to your competitors. If you're willing to take responsibility for your choices, all right, no problem. And other people will thank you for the choices that you made. But at the end of the day, you do not need the government to legislate this way or that way. Most sane people will say, you don't want my business? Okay, I'll go somewhere else, right? That's all you need. And that actually preserves a lot of order in the system. You can see that when people try to do this, that everyone's happy with the contract and the transaction. There are some people who are not, and those are generally politicians. It's the government who likes to interfere and say, you're not making the choice I want you to make. It's the law, and therefore they disrupt the free market. So in order for the free market to function well, you need little to no government. And when there is no interference, then people are not going to deliberately do harm to each other. Rather, they're going to try to increase benefit for everybody. And the competition would be very, very stiff. Of course, people who are not as good will go out of business, but everybody else will benefit. And I would argue, even the person who goes bankrupt will benefit too, because it becomes very easy to get back in the game, right? You like these days, because of all the regulations and the costs, it's very expensive to go bankrupt. But in a more free society, not as expensive. And so you can come out of bankruptcy much, much quicker, okay? And so this is why having an impersonal market is extremely beneficial. But what are we seeing today? We're seeing everyone emphasize their gender, emphasize their race, emphasize their religion, wear it on their sleeve. And they're telling people, pay attention to this, not what I am selling, not what I am trying to buy, because nothing else important. That is how you create a poor society. And so the more impersonal the marketplace is, the more you get to personally wrestle with and decide, dig into information to figure out who you are as an individual, not as society decided they want to see you. Also, the more impersonal the marketplace is, the more peaceful, the more harmonious, the more tolerant society will be, because we can see all of the benefits from voluntary interaction. That's it for this episode. I will see you in the next one.